There we go.
Okay. Imagine a world where having a certain characteristic made you a target for abuse, hatred, anger, and discrimination. Where having this characteristic made you hate yourself and your future children who may also hold this characteristic. Now imagine if I told you that this characteristic was being a girl. This is the sad reality many women of all ages face in many parts of Asia just for being born a girl. I would like to inform everyone here about the gendercide that is going on in India and in China. I'm qualified to speak about this because I'm a women's studies major, the research I've done on this project, and my interest in it. There is something everyone should know because people should be aware about this. Extreme gender preference towards males causes the death of millions of women of all ages in many years and is still continuing. I will be going over the roots and background of gendercide, the gendercide in India and China, and the solution and possible hope for this situation. To understand gendercide, you have to understand where the word's roots from. You may have heard of the word genocide, and genocide is the deliberate and systematic extermination of a national, racial, political, or cultural group. It also comes from the term from World War II when Hitler tried to eliminate all the Jews. And gendercide roots from that because it's the extermination of a group based on their gender, which is also known as femicide. We live in a gendercide world because of patriarchy, which is where males are more important than females, or they're the head of the household. And this can be seen in many cultures and religions because men are valued more than females. Now that I've gone over some of the background of gendercide, I will now go over how gendercide continues to happen in India. The reasons for gendercide in India is because of the family dynamic, where male roles are more important than female roles. How women are seen more as property than they are as women, because they belong first to their fathers, and if their fathers aren't there, they belong to their brothers, and then they belong to their husbands and their husband's family. Also, a big contributor to gendercide is dowries. In India, when a woman gets married, her family gives assets, which can be money, land, livestock, or anything of value. And that goes to the male husband's family. So if the husband is not happy with the dowry or it's not enough, the wives can be killed, and it's known as a dowry death. The reason for dowries is also the cultural view, where if you have a daughter, you have a burden because you have to give away your assets. But if you have a son, you gain wealth from the wives. And even though dowries are outlawed in India, it's not prosecuted or that big of a deal to the government there. The result of this gendercide in India is there is feticide, which is the killing of a fetus or abortion based on their gender, which is very well known in richer parts of India. Also, for poorer poverty countries in India, infanticide is very common, which is killing the daughter as soon as it's born or abandoning it after. Even the daughters that do survive do face a harder life because many of them are neglected, abused, and they have a high mortality rate. There are huge gender gaps, meaning there are more husbands out there than there are brides to be. So because of this, there's a very high line of sex trafficking where you buy and sell women from other countries or within their country. There's also a high number of child brides in the country. And there's also wife sharing, where there's not enough brides in one tribe or area. I'm going to share the story of Mittu Kaharana. She was an Indian bride who was married and was pregnant with twins. Her husband wanted to find out the sex of the babies, but she refused. It's also outlawed in India, but you can pay the doctor. When she refused, she was locked away by her husband and her mother-in-law for 3 days with no food or water. After she became sick, she was brought to the hospital where the husband, without her knowledge, paid to find out the ultrasound. She found out she was having 2 girls. When her husband found out about this, he pressured her to have an abortion. She refused, and he pushed her down the stairs, hoping she would miscarry, but she didn't. She ran away and got a mutual divorce with her husband. Her husband was never charged, and she ended up having 2 healthy baby girls, but they were born 2 months prematurely. Her case is not very common. This is a common thing in India, where the wife is abused or neglected by the husband because of the gender of her child. What is extraordinary about her case, though, is she shared it with everybody and writes blogs and is trying to break out of the inequality of women in India. This is just a condensed version of gendercide that goes on in India. I will now move on to the gendercide that happens in China. The reasons that it happens in China is because it is also a patriarchy society where the dynamic is the son is the oldest and he will take care of the family in their old age, the parents. But the wives, when they're married, they move on to their husband's family. There's no social security or retirement homes in China, so that's the system they live on. And also, China has a very strict one-child rule where you can only have one child. It doesn't cause gendercide, but it does heighten the need and want for a son more than a daughter. They also have strict family planning police in China that will force women up to their due date who violated the rule of having one child, and they're brought to have a forced abortion or forced sterilization. The outcomes of this gendercide in China are a term called bare branches, where there are many bachelors in China and not enough wives or females. The unnatural gender ratio is normally 105 baby boys born to 100 girls that are born. In China, it's 109 boys to every 100 girls, and that's very unnatural and is continuing to grow. Because of this, many girls are unwanted in China and are abandoned or killed, much like India. And there's many sex selection abortions in China. They also have a very high unnaturally suicide rate for women in China and India, because many of the women would rather die than disgrace their family without bearing a son. I have gone over the most extreme cases of gendercide in the world. You might wonder if there's even hope, and there is. I will now cover how South Korea has almost completely eliminated gendercide in their country. South Korea, much like China, had a heavy population and was growing. When the ultrasound technology was coming out, the media started pressuring for smaller families or one child, and they had very harsh outcomes, much like China and India. The gender gap was worse than ever in history and is higher than it was in China, with 115 boys born to every 100 girls. Less than 20 years, they were able to close the gender gap and practically get it to normal, with 106 baby boys born to 100 girls. They did this by starting to educate girls and reverse many of the patriarchy ways and pass equal opportunity legislation for women and enforce it. I've gone over the roots and background of gendercide, the gendercide that happens in India and China, and hope that can be found from South Korea. Today, hopefully many of us are aware of the horrific events with gendercide that are going on even today. It's sad to know that many people are being murdered because of their gender, something that none of us can help being. It's even sadder that the number of girls being routinely killed in India alone is more than the number of Jews that were killed in the Holocaust. And this is still going on. Hopefully, with everyone being more aware and the documentaries being made, it can shed some light on this issue and save women of all ages who are being victims just because they are born female. Thank you.